Hey guys, it's me, and I'm here today to do a long-anticipated review that I've waited to do for the last 7 years. Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2, starring Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, and various other people from the previous game, and a few newcomers as well. If you guys were hoping for an immediate review to be published, I apologize. I played this over the first weekend that it was released, and it took a couple days for me to finally get through it. The first night, I stayed up until about 3:30 in the morning, and that was Friday night to Saturday morning, and that's not something I usually do with video games or any kind of movie, or you get the idea. But so that was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I was really happy on Saturday morning while also a bit sad, and then Saturday evening I was very depressed, and the roller coaster just kept going up and down from there on out. But I finally beat the game, and I've had some time to process it and think about it and discuss it with other people, as well as looking into some other reviews, and I'm not really surprised by the reaction that it's been getting, although the leaks that came out a couple of months before the game's release, that didn't really help. And I've actually gone back and looked at the leaks, at least from what I can tell. They don't really give any context as to why those things are the way they are. Some people were so determined that this game was going to suck no matter what, based on what we saw in those leaks. And certain people, I guess, made it seem like that it was going to have some kind of a liberal SJW agenda, and I'm sorry, but that is not here. It's not here in the slightest. Yes, Ellie is gay, and she's in a same-sex relationship, but they don't preach about it. They don't shove it in your face. I don't think that they do. And the young kid Lev being a transgender character, apparently, please correct me in the comments politely if I got that wrong. I don't see that as a problem, because those are the different types of people that do exist in the real world, whether we like it or not. And the trashing of the character Abby, who we'll talk about later on, her having all these abs, and they try to make it look like that she was some kind of a transgender man.
How thick could you get?
Mother of God. You can have your opinions on whether or not this is a liberal propaganda piece, even though I strongly disagree with that. But if you honestly believe that, and that's why you hate this game, truth be told, I think you guys are idiots. And we are going to go into spoilers. I was going to do a non-spoiler review at one point, but then I decided, no, there's too much to talk about. I gotta talk about this in full detail. And this is for people who have played the game in its entirety. And if you're one of those people who have managed to beat it, feel free to stick around and listen to my thoughts, and hopefully we can have a good conversation. And I've had some good conversations about this game. But if you're here to just rant about how Naughty Dog ruined the first game, or how it ruined your childhood, or some other nonsense that's being thrown around the internet, as it's not really surprising to see that, don't waste my time. Please, I'm not going to stand for that here. I'm sorry, but I'm not. Those of you who've been following me, this is not really much of a surprise, but for those of you who might be tuning in for the very first time, the first Last of Us game by Naughty Dog Studios, by far the best game that I've ever played in my life, and it's my all-time favorite video game. The acting, the graphics, the story, the emotions, everything about that game just was absolute perfection for me. And ever since the ending scene where Ellie confronts Joel about whether or not the Firefly's story is actually true, I had been wanting to see a sequel for the longest time, and I think a lot of fans were expecting it too. And for a while, Naughty Dog was kind of like, we are considering it, but we're not sure if we're gonna do it. Neil Druckmann's the kind of guy who wants to be absolutely sure that this is a story worth telling, so I don't blame him for taking his time on it. And also, they were making Uncharted 4, Thief's End, so I get why they didn't do it right away. They had other things to focus on. But when that first trailer came out over 3 years ago, God, my hype meter just went through the roof. And then the road leading up to it, where we finally got some more trailers and some more demos, like an actual idea of what the gameplay is like. And then the release dates came up, and they kept getting pushed back because of the update to the PS5, and then the coronavirus pandemic happened. It's just, and on top of that, with the leaks that came out, it hasn't exactly been an easy ride. But let me tell you, it was absolutely worth it in my book, because I think that after playing it and having some time to digest it, I'm very happy to report that this game is just awesome. Yes, I like the game. Shoot me. Do I think it's on the level of the first one? Maybe not quite. I think the character of Abby drags the story down a little bit, but other than that, I think the story is just about on par with the first one. And it's the complete opposite of the first one in terms of its thematic elements. The first game was about love. The second one is about hate. And Neil Druckmann has publicly said this after that first trailer was released a couple of years ago. How far are you willing to go to do something out of love for someone that you care about in the apocalypse? And in this one, how far are you going to go to exact revenge on someone that you do love before you let the hatred inside of you consume you? And I think it did exactly what it was trying to do, almost, and keyword almost, perfectly. Let's talk about the graphics. No matter what you think of this game and its story, you cannot deny that the visual look of this game is just astounding, and it is gorgeous to look at. The scope of this game, the looks of certain environments like in Jackson, Wyoming, Seattle, and then later as we go to Santa Barbara, California at the climax of the story, all the environments that they set up and all the little details that they put in there, like certain coffee shops or certain buildings, even though some of the places don't exist in real life as they show here in Seattle, the level of detail that went into this game, scouting out the locations and making sure that they got it exactly the way it looks, that is something that this game does flawlessly. And I just started playing it again recently. One little detail that I caught on is when Joel and Tommy ride back to Jackson and they're going through the woods, and then the sun starts to peek through the trees. Joel puts up his hand as he's being blinded by the sunlight. That little attention to detail, along with some other movements like picking up certain items along the way and how seamless it looks, oh my god, that was a huge improvement over the first one. Because in the first one, when you pick up certain items for your equipment, it's just like a generic... But this one, it's like... I just like that little detail. It shows you just how much care and thought went into this. And like with everything else, the visual design of the infected looks 100 times better than it did in the first one. There's a lot more detail on the looks of the clickers in terms of the fungal plates that are growing over the body, the stalkers too, and the runners. And the bloaters do show up, yes. But then there's also new types of infected, which we'll talk about later. But the skin on the runners, for instance, seeing how greasy and just worn down they look after a few days of being infected, not that that really matters, but it's really cool that they did that because it shows you that once you lose all your human instincts, you don't really seem to care about your appearance as much. And that, I think, is a very believable scenario. Now, the plot of this game is set about 5 years after the events of the first Last of Us. Ellie is living in Jackson, Wyoming in a sort of a romantic relationship with this girl, Dina. And she goes on regular routine patrols around Jackson to clear out infected or any kind of intruders that come nearby. Then a tragic event occurs which rocks the whole town of Jackson, causing Ellie to go on a revenge path in Seattle to find those who wronged her and get retribution. Ellie is 19 years old at this point, and she's a bit more bitter and hardened than she was when we last saw her in the first one. She's got a friendship with this guy named Jesse, and also with his ex-girlfriend Dina, who's kind of interested in her in a romantic way. And they go out on this one patrol clearing out infected until one night they actually settle into this one big building during the middle of a snowstorm, and then, as you probably expect, they end up spending the night together. Joel and Tommy, on the other hand, are on another patrol clearing out certain types of infected, and then they run into this woman named Abby who's being ambushed by runners. They save her, and she leads them back to her hideout outside of Jackson with all her other friends that she has waiting for her. Right when we first meet Abby, my thought was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? What's the deal with this girl? And when you start to play her, I thought, wait a minute, we're actually going to play her for a little while? I was really curious to see how they were going to do that, because they do that in the first game with Sarah, and then it transitions to Joel, and then it transitions to Ellie. This one playing as Abby, I thought, oh, okay, what's the deal with this girl? And then when she leads Tommy and Joel back to her house, something doesn't feel right, because everyone's looking at them very intensely. And then Abby pulls out a golf club and smacks Joel in the leg with it, breaking his leg. And then she starts beating the crap out of him. Ellie finds Joel, they pin her to the floor, and Abby kills Joel with the golf club. Joel dies. Going into the game, I had a feeling that Joel was going to die somehow, but this was not the way I expected it to be at all. I thought that Dina was going to be the one who dies or gets severely wounded, and that's what causes Ellie to go on a revenge path. But seeing Joel die at the hands of Abby, who was part of the Washington Liberation Front, who's more or less the main antagonist of the story, that was absolute insanity. And when she delivers the killing blow to Joel...
Please don't shoot. Joel, please get up.
No! Kill you. I'm gonna kill you. I swear to God, I'm gonna kill you.
My palms were sweating, my hands were shaking for about a good 20 to 40 minutes, and I actually had to pause the game and start walking around the house trying to calm myself down, because I was just... there are no words to describe it. There's none. And seeing the reactions of Abby and her various friends like Jordan and Nora and Manny, just like Ellie, I was dead set on getting revenge. Yes, let's get these guys. They killed Joel, let's make them pay. Against the advice of Maria and Tommy, Ellie remains dead set on going to Seattle and finding these people. And seeing in the first game how certain cities were portrayed like Boston, Pittsburgh, Salt Lake City, or Jackson, I was really curious to see what city would be featured in the next one, and Seattle takes up about a giant portion of this game. And what's the deal with Seattle anyway, besides that Chaz thing or whatever that's going on? What's so special about Seattle? Oh, I know why.
It's the pesto of cities.
So as Ellie and Dina go throughout Seattle encountering the Washington Liberation Front, trying to find the people responsible for Joel's death, the gameplay leading into it was one of the most insane and riveting experiences I've ever had. Seeing the AI improve dramatically, trying to outmaneuver all the guys that you encounter in the streets and in the certain suburban areas of Seattle. I've never had an experience like this with a video game that I can remember personally. Now, granted, I haven't really played a lot of video games in my life. I'm more of a movie person, but when it comes to video games, I played stuff like Call of Duty, Medal of Honor. This, I think, takes the cake to 11. And there's also little stuff that they throw in there, like when you kill a certain enemy and another one of their allies finds their body, the enemies have names. They call out their names and it changes their attitude, it changes their behavior, and it makes them a lot more set on trying to find you and kill you. Up until then, they would just come off as cannon fodder, like whenever a bad guy would see his ally on the ground, they would go, "Man down, man down." But you hear stuff in this game like, "Oh my god, it's Ashley, she's down. Oh god, it's Rob, someone killed him."
It's Rob! What is it? Someone took him out! Eat this!
And also, they use dogs to sniff you out and kill you. The game makes you try to kill dogs to survive.
Please don't make me do this.
Not cool, guys. Not cool. Not cool. But the dogs also add a bit of tension to the scenarios as well. Like when you go into listen mode, you actually see the scent trail following up right behind you, and the dog is going to use that to sniff you out. So you got to be constantly on the move trying to stay away from these dogs. And you can use certain things like the brick or the bottle and throw it in the opposite direction, and then when it crashes, the dog and the handler are distracted from your scent and they'll go over to the other area and investigate. But eventually they're going to catch on to it and see that it's not there, and they'll go back to your scent trail. So you got to be constantly on your toes. You can also hide in the grass, and you can even go prone on your belly, crawling under certain areas like a big truck or a big tree that's crashed to the ground, or you can hide in the grass prone, which actually is a really good advantage to a certain point, because if an enemy gets too close to you and sees you, and you have similar types of weapons that you had in the first game, a pistol, a shotgun, a hunting rifle, you have a flamethrower at one point, but much later on in the game, and then you have like the Molotov cocktail and a bomb that you can plant on the ground. No nail bombs though. That was kind of a bummer. And you could also upgrade your tech as well, like clip capacity, fire rates, and so on and so forth, and update your listening mode and various other abilities that you have. But like with the first one, you gotta look for supplies as much as you can and build up your arsenal. And be very conservative with how much ammunition you spend, because if you only have like 3 rounds and there's a lot of enemies in the area, you better make your shots count. And like with the first one, you get to go on a horse, which in comparison to the first game, there's a lot more to it in this one, where you and Dina ride into the city of Seattle, or if you're with Lev and Abby going through the Seraphite village on the island when all the fire is breaking out. And also, you get to play the guitar. Using the controller, you can swipe your thumb on the middle portion of the controller, holding the control stick in a certain direction, and that leads to some of the most emotionally impactful scenes, like, "If I ever were to lose you," or when Ellie sings "Take on Me." Never listen to that song the same way again. And that little look that Dina gives Ellie when she's singing "Take on Me," it reminds me of that little look that Ellie gives to Nate in the 4th Uncharted game when they find all the dead pirates in the one mansion. You don't really see that stuff in a video game like this. It's just so refreshing to see that. And I'm not saying that all games have to be the same, like when it comes to art and good storytelling. Games can be fun, yeah, like Mario Kart and Star Fox 64, but games can also be great art too. And this one is right up there. Now, in terms of the story, this is where a lot of people are drawing back on. I understand why people don't like this game in terms of the story and characterizations. Killing Joel, for instance, you better have a damn good reason for doing that. And in my opinion, I think it paid off. Because after a while, we actually get to play as Abby from the other side of the conflict on day 1, 2, and 3. And we learn that her father was a surgeon that was about to operate on Ellie when she was taken to the Firefly Hospital, and Joel killed him in the process trying to save Ellie. At first, I wasn't really keen on playing Abby, and I still didn't really like that because she killed our beloved Joel. Come on. But then when you see why she went to kill him in the first place with her father dying, that point I said, I get it. But then after that, when you go through certain days like day 1, 2, and 3 playing as Abby, you get to see certain flashbacks that occur between her and her love interest Owen, who's in a bit of a love triangle between Abby and this other woman named Mel, who's the medic of sorts. After a while, I kind of find myself going, okay, I get it. Can we get back to Ellie, please? This isn't as interesting. Now, I understand what they were trying to do with Abby, showing you different perspectives and seeing that, okay, Ellie has a good reason for going after her, but then again, look at Abby's perspective and why she killed Joel. Is she any better than Ellie? Is she any worse? Or is she any worse than Joel? Just like the first game, it's all about a matter of perspective. You're basically a jackass to somebody. Even in our world, you're basically a jerk to somebody else. But truth be told, are we really that different from each other? I got my opinions on that personally, but I'm not going to get into that here. But I think it does a good job, for the most part at least, showing you different perspectives on how, some people might do actually dark things in this world, but it's from their perspective, and if they feel wronged, they're going to do what they feel is best.
To make a fully realized world, to really honor the impact of this violence, you have to honor every person in it. Nobody's a hero here.
But I also think there's one too many flashbacks after a while, particularly when we see Abby's storyline. At a certain point on day 2, we cut to another flashback that takes place 4 months prior, and I went, oh my god, another one? Okay, I get it. Can we please get back to Ellie already? I understand it's all character building, but still, I think if they just trimmed it down a little bit, it wouldn't have felt as dragged out. That's just me, though. I do like seeing the flashbacks with Ellie and Joel when they go to that natural history museum with all the dinosaurs and the space stuff, and in fact, they actually reference Jurassic Park in that scene.
That is a velociraptor.
Actually, it's a Deinonychus.
Pretty sure these are velociraptors. Yeah. I mean, at least that's what they called them in this movie I saw.
But then there's other flashbacks that we get, such as when Ellie first uses a sniper rifle to kill infected from far away. Then she and Joel later encounter a bloater, which that boss fight was horrifying, and you have to let it get its hands on you in order for Joel to finally kill that thing. And Naughty Dog, you don't make it easy, do you? Why do I ask? But then another flashback that we get with Ellie is when she finally goes back to the hospital in Salt Lake City, and she finds an old recording of Marlene saying that the vaccination wouldn't really matter. Joel finds her, and then she says to him, "Tell me the truth. Is there a cure?" Joel finally fesses up that the cure would have killed her and that he stopped them. And Ellie is not too happy about that. And she says, "I'll come back to Jackson, but you and I were through." I expected Joel to tell her the truth somehow, but again, it wasn't exactly in the way that I expected, because I expected Joel to be alive for a good portion of this game, and after one point maybe he would say to her, "Hey, look, is this really worth it going on this revenge path? What good is this going to do you?" And maybe she would resist for a little bit, and then he would finally tell her the truth in order to discourage her, and then she takes off saying, "You and I are done. I'll never talk to you again." Not exactly in the way I expected, but is that a bad thing? Well, it depends on your perspective as a person, but for me, I didn't mind it personally. I thought it was fine. Could it have been a little bit better? Possibly, but this is the way that Naughty Dog wanted to do it, and whether you guys like it or not, we're not making the game here. Neil Druckmann and his guys are. This is the story that they wanted to tell. We have to go along for the ride and hope that it was going to be done well in execution. That's all we can do as the audience. Even though Joel is not really in here for a good portion of it, the scenes that we do get with him and Ellie, it feels very emotionally rich and very powerful too. And Troy Baker, I cannot stress this enough. He is a terrific actor, and him as Joel, I feel him as that character, and he is just as great in this game as he was in the first one. Ashley Johnson as Ellie, oh my god. Ellie has to go through some really, really rough stuff in this one. Killing people like Mel and Owen, and Mel being pregnant, and seeing that affect her when she realizes that she's pregnant. And then also when she comes back from killing Nora in the hospital, she is clearly shaken up and rocked emotionally by what she just did. And little by little, she's starting to realize, is this revenge thing really worth it? Is it really worth going through all this hate in order to get to what I want? And I like seeing those little things. It's not so on the nose when they explain it. We see Ellie continuously growing slowly but surely even more tired and more disenfranchised with a desire to fight injustice. Sounded like a description for Batman. Hey, Ashley Johnson, you want to be in a Batman movie? Hey, can somebody put Ashley Johnson in a Batman thing already? Troy Baker did it. Why not Ashley Johnson? I also like the romantic relationship she has with Dina, played by Shannon Woodward. It's very charming and very sweet and endearing, and the interplay that they have with each other, like, you're infuriating. Have you met you?
Did I ruin your punchline? No. Maybe. You.
And even though there's not a whole lot of time that we get with them, I like seeing Jesse tag along, and I like seeing what Tommy gets to do also, like being a sniper trying to kill Abby. And in fact, that mission when you're trying to dodge the sniper bullets, at first I thought, all right, who's this guy? I'm really getting sick of this. But then as we got closer to him, and I saw the silhouette from a distance, I thought, oh my god. Oh my god, that's Tommy! This game does a really good job of messing with your emotions, putting you on the other side of the conflict against the characters that you like. Neil Druckmann, you son of a gun. And even though I don't entirely love playing as Abby, it does allow for some really great character and story moments, like her protecting Lev from the Seraphites and trying to help his sister Yara, walking on this big thin walkway into the skyscraper trying to find medical supplies, and then sneaking into the hospital where it was ground zero for the infected outbreak, running into this new type of infected called the Rat King, apparently.
Holy shit!
I thought the boss fight with David in the first one was terrifying. Oh boy, was I wrong. Neil Druckmann teased it in one of the presentations that he put out to the public, and then even spoiler-free reviews hinted at it, and I thought, what is this thing? Is it an animal? Is it an infected lion or an actual rat? What's going on here? That's the one where you gotta be constantly moving and trying to get as many supplies as you can and throwing everything that you got, from a flamethrower, a shotgun, hunting rifle, pistol, pipe bombs, anything you can get your hands on. And leading up to that portion of the game, you gotta stock up on everything that you can find, because when you face off against that thing, it's now or never. And I think I died at least 8 or 9 times trying to kill that thing. And I had nightmares for 4 days after that. And then another part of that thing breaks off as you're fighting it, like a clicker/stalker or something, and then you have to chase it through the vents, and then you finally encounter it in that one room, and it takes about 20 hits before you finally kill it. I dropped my controller and I was like, yes, yes! And I had to walk around going like, woosah, woosah, woosah. That section is absolutely horrifying. That's like something that you would see in a horror movie. And I think that Naughty Dog excelled at that tremendously. Even if you don't like what they do with Abby in this game, that sequence at least, you can't deny how intense that is. Speaking of Abby, she's part of the Washington Liberation Front, the WLF, or the Wolves as they're called. It's basically the population of the quarantine zone in Seattle, and they rebelled against the US military in that zone and set up their own control over the city, killing any trespassers that they come across. And they're in a turf war with the Seraphites, this religious cult of sorts that uses bows and arrows and all types of pistols and weapons that they pick off the WLF. And they're very territorial and they're very tribalistic. I don't know which is worse, fighting the WLF or the Seraphites, or Scars as they call them. I'm gonna go with the Scars on that one, because getting hit with a bow and arrow, that's not fun. And then towards the climax of the game, we run into another group of human survivors called the Rattlers, settled in Santa Barbara, California. They're this group of people that take human prisoners and put them in a pit fight against infected, like a gladiator fight of sorts, and they starve the human prisoners that they run into. You know what? I think these guys might just be as bad as the Seraphites, or maybe even worse. No, the Seraphites are worse, but these guys are not too far off. And since I mentioned new types of infected, there's another one in here too, called the Shambler. The Shambler has this kind of a pustule acidic bubble that forms all around it, and then it can run if it detects an enemy, and then once it gets close enough, it explodes some kind of a gaseous cloud that kills its enemies, and you see all these acid burns on their bodies. Now, they never really go into like where these things actually come from, but from what I've read online, the theory is that they constantly were exposed to water and the weather, which caused them to mutate into something else other than a bloater.
It's cool, it's disgusting.
So after Abby and Lev manage to escape from the Seraphied Island, she finds the bodies of Owen and Mel and the old tourist map that Ellie was using to track her down. So she finally heads to the theater to confront Ellie, and she kills Jesse, severely wounds Tommy and Dina in the process, and I thought that all those guys were dead. But the fight between her and Ellie, when they make you play as Abby fighting Ellie, and I thought, don't you make me do this. No, don't make me kill Ellie, come on! And then Abby's about to kill Dina after Ellie says she's pregnant. Good. But then Lev stops her saying, Abby, no, don't do this. And I would assume, even though they don't say it out loud, she probably thought of her friend Mel when she was pregnant when she died. And then she realized she was about to do the same thing. And then she says to Ellie as she leaves, don't ever let me see you again. And then it cuts to about 18 months later. Dina's alive, she and Ellie have settled in this farmhouse outside of Jackson, and she's given birth to her son JJ, which Jesse is the father. And Ellie seems to be at peace with her new life, but unfortunately, her PTSD is still affecting her. She still sees Joel dying on the floor. She still feels that desire for revenge against Abby. So Tommy shows up at Ellie's house telling her that Abby has made her way to Santa Barbara, California in hopes of finding a Firefly hideout. She manages to get in touch on the radio with some Fireflies that are on this island somewhere off the west coast. But then as she and Lev try to get away, they get captured by the Rattlers. After pondering it for a while, Ellie decides that no, I gotta finish this. Against the advice of Dina, she goes on her quest to find Abby for good. She makes her way through the compound, setting the prisoners free, and then she finds Abby on this pillar and she decides to let her and Lev go. But then as they're about to get away on the boat, Ellie says, no, I'm not done with you. We're doing this right now. And Abby's like, no, I don't want to do this. Just let us go, man. But then the inevitable fight happens. And tell you the truth, at first I was dead set on killing Abby. I thought, yes, get her, screw her. But at this point I thought, Ellie, this is not going to bring Joel back, man. Just let her go. Don't do this. And when she finally pins her down in the water, ready to drown her, she has this image of Joel sitting on the porch. She snaps, and then she says, no, I can't do this. Just go. Get out of here. Abby and Lev take off to find the Fireflies, and Ellie is a complete wreck. And then the game ends with her going back to her house. The whole house is empty. Dina's gone, JJ's gone, but Ellie's stuff is still there in her room. So she picks up the guitar, but unfortunately, since she lost her 2 fingers in her fight with Abby, she's no longer able to play guitar. And then we get another flashback with her talking to Joel, trying to figure out, why did you do that? Why did you save me? My life could have meant something.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
It just goes to show you how much he cares about her, even though she pushed him away. Oh my God. She never really properly forgave him. And I think she feels a deep sense of regret for that, which I think is another reason why she went on her revenge path. And now she wishes that she could go back and change it all. Kind of reminds me of the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, where he says to Uncle Ben before he sees him die, stop pretending to be my father. And then when he thinks back on it, he really wishes that he didn't say that before he died. Ellie is feeling a similar situation here with Joel. And therefore she puts the guitar back on the stand, and then she just walks away back to Jackson, supposedly, and then the game ends. I thought that was perfect. I thought it was a perfect ending because letting her emotions get the better of her, her desire for getting revenge for the injustice that was done to her, she basically pushed everything away. And I think that what she's realized, that she's let the hate cycle consume her, and she wishes that she could take it all back and just go back to what she has, realizing that she actually does have a good life. Now, has Dina broken up with her? Possibly? But we don't know exactly the circumstances with it. I saw this thing on Twitter where this guy pointed out that there is a letter from Dina's parents saying that you, Ellie, are always welcome in our house at any time. And then there's also little things like the bracelet that she wears that she got from Dina. She's wearing that when she finally shows up at the house, so maybe Dina decided to take her back in. Who knows? But I like that they don't really show us what exactly happened. And the fact that people are upset that she didn't get her revenge, I get why people are upset about that, but I actually like that she doesn't get her revenge because she realizes when she's about to kill Abby, she's going to do the same thing that Abby did to Joel. And then when she sees that little kid that she's protecting, just like Joel did with her, if she kills Abby, that kid might come after her. Just like Abby did to Joel. Not properly forgiving Joel before he died, I think that's what finally snapped her out of it. So I understand why people don't like it, but me personally, I thought it was a bit refreshing. And I think in execution, they did it just about perfectly. So in conclusion, The Last of Us Part 2 might not be quite as good as the first one, mostly because of what happens with Abby and her storyline being dragged out a little bit, but other than that, I actually think that this is just about on par with the first game, and I would really like to see a Part 3. I feel like it's inevitable there's going to be a third one, and I've heard Neil Druckmann say in interviews that he is considering it, although that would be really hard for him to go back to it, because the sense I get from him is that he feels like he's done everything that he has to do with this storyline. He kind of said that with the first one, if I remember correctly, but if he doesn't do a third one, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, but if he decides to do a third one, I'm all there for it. And no matter what the reactions are with this game, it's selling a lot of copies and it's making a lot of money across the world. So I highly doubt that the negative reviews that this game is getting is going to affect whether or not there's a third game. And considering the first game's success, I think it was inevitable that it was going to be a franchise of some kind. So I guess I'm not really surprised that there was a second game, just like I wouldn't be surprised if there was a third one. And any Last of Us content that comes out in the next several years or so, consider me in. I'm all down for it. Because I think the world that they set up in the first one and expanded on in this one, it's just so intriguing and so enticing that they have so many opportunities to create new stories out of this world. Seeing other places like Chicago or New York or Philly, just like we saw how Seattle dealt with the situation, or a place like Miami, or heck, even go to another country like Germany or Italy or Ireland or Japan or something. You know, show us how people around the world dealt with the outbreak. I would really love to see what they can do with that, if they're interested, of course. And I don't want to keep harping on this, but for people who don't like this game, I totally understand, and I don't blame you for feeling angry like you did, but I think that if you're really going to go into this game with the predetermined mindset from what you saw from the leaks and continue to be upset about that, try giving this game another chance. Just let go of all your expectations, which is what I did, and just go along for the ride. I don't want to make any predictions here because I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that maybe a year or so from now, maybe 2 years, a year and a half or whatever, when people look back on this game, the ones that are ranting and raving about how bad they think this game is, I'm willing to bet that some of those people are going to change their tune and say, you know what? That was actually a lot better than I give it credit for. It's actually a really good game. Not perfect though, but still pretty good game. That's the sense that I get, at least. Not everybody's going to be on board with it. I don't expect everybody to love it. If some people could at least look back on it once all the hype has been completely detached from their mindset, I'd be very curious to see what people are going to say a year or so from now. So at least that is what I have to look forward to, and hopefully more people can come around to this, because the comments and reactions that I'm seeing online is just really, really toxic and negative. And I think that it might give the Star Wars fan base a run for its money. Oh God, I don't even want to think about that right now. That's another story that I'll get to later on. So yeah, all in all, I think The Last of Us Part 2 is a very solid game, and I would totally be down for seeing Part 3. Neil Druckmann, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, Shannon Woodward, everybody else involved with this game, great, great job. And if you guys decide to do any more in this universe, consider me on board. I'd be totally down with seeing whatever else you guys have left to go. Those are my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. What are your thoughts on the game? Do you love it, like it, think it's alright, or do you hate it? Whatever the case is, comment below and tell me your thoughts. I'll see you guys all very soon. Endure and survive. May your survival be long, and may your death be swift.